All right, so today we're diving into a career I think we've all daydreamed about at some point. Marine biology. I mean, who hasn't pictured themselves on a boat, researching dolphins, maybe even discovering a new species?
Oh, absolutely. The dream is definitely out there.
Yeah.
But like any dream job, there's always more to it than meets the eye, right?
Get the reality check.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where RoleCatcher comes in. They've got this awesome guide to becoming a marine biologist. And today we're going to break it down, figure out what it really takes to make this career, actually swim.
I like that. Make it swim. Okay, so first things first, for someone who maybe only has that dolphins are cool level of knowledge, how does Rollcatcher even define what a marine biologist is?
Yeah, they do a good job of painting a pretty clear picture. It's not just, splashing around with sea creatures all day. You're a scientist, first and foremost. Study marine organisms, their ecosystems, how they've evolved. We're talking physiology, behavior, the whole underwater shebang.
So definitely rooted in some serious science then. But within that, it seems like the actual work is pretty varied. From what I was reading, we're talking research, field work, analyzing stuff in a lab.
Exactly, and that's something RoleCatcher really emphasizes, that sheer range of tasks. One day you might be on a research vessel collecting samples, the next you're in the lab analyzing that data, and then, who knows, maybe even writing up your findings for a scientific publication.
Which I guess makes sense, but it's not always what we picture, right? It's not all like underwater adventures all the time.
Right.
Now, I did notice Rollcatcher mentions this field is growing, which sounds promising, but then they hit us with a bit of a reality check.
Yeah, there's always a but, isn't there?
Right.
A growing field means more opportunities, which is exciting, but the competition, it's fierce. They actually cite a statistic. On average, for every entry-level marine biologist position, there are over 200 applicants.
Wait, 200 to 1.
That's what they're saying.
Okay, that is a serious reality check. You've got to be really passionate to even, like, go for it with those odds. So for those who are still in the game, what does Rollcatcher say it takes to even get your foot in the door?
Well, first and foremost, you got to be willing to put in the academic work. They're very clear. A bachelor's degree, non-negotiable. You might be surprised to hear this.
Hit me with it.
Two-thirds of working marine biologists, they hold a master's degree or higher.
Wow, seriously, 66% are going beyond that initial bachelor's.
That's right.
That's a lot higher than I would expected. What do you think's driving that trend?
I think it really speaks to the level of specialization within the field.
Oh.
Whether you're researching coral reefs or deep sea ecosystems or marine mammals, that extra education, it can give you a real edge.
So a solid educational foundation is key. But Rollcatcher doesn't stop there. They also get into the essential skills you need, and some of these might surprise people.
Oh, for sure. I think this is where we start to uncover those real nuances of this career path. Because it's more than just textbook knowledge, right? It's about how you think, how you communicate, your ability to adapt and persevere, especially in those challenging environments.
Sounds like we're about to go beyond the books and into the nitty-gritty of what makes a marine biologist successful. But before we do, let's take a quick pause to hear a word from our sponsors. We'll be right back to unpack those crucial skills, so don't go anywhere. And we're back, still swimming along on our deep dive into the world of marine biology. Before the break, we were starting to unpack some of those essential skills. Rollcatcher highlights, the stuff that doesn't always make it onto those dolphins and coral reefs posters.
Right, exactly. It's easy to get fixated on the science itself, but to really thrive as a marine biologist, you need a pretty broad skill set. One thing RoleCatcher really emphasizes is critical thinking.
Which, now that I think about it, makes total sense. You're out there in the field, observing, analyzing, trying to solve these complex puzzles about how these ecosystems actually work.
Exactly. You're constantly gathering data, interpreting results, forming hypotheses, and it's not just about your own thinking either. You need to be able to analyze the work of other scientists, identify potential biases, evaluate different scientific arguments. It's a lot.
It's like being a scientific detective in a way.
Kind of, yeah.
And I'm guessing those analytical skills go hand in hand with another skill Rollcatcher talks about, communication.
100%. You can be the absolute most brilliant researcher in the world, but if you can't communicate your findings effectively, well, it's like that old saying, right? If a tree falls in the...
And nobody hears it, did it really make a sound?
Exactly.
I never thought about it like that, but it makes total sense. We're talking writing research papers, presenting at conferences, even just explaining your work to the public sometimes.
All of it. And each audience requires a slightly different approach,
Yeah.
a different communication style. You might need to break down these really complex scientific concepts for policymakers,
Mm.
the people who are actually making decisions about the ocean.
Right.
Or maybe you need to get funding agencies excited enough about your research to give you a grant.
So you're not just a scientist, you're a storyteller, an advocate for your work and the ocean itself.
It's all connected.
And speaking of hands-on experience, RoleCatcher also talks about the importance of certifications. I mean, scuba diving has got to be on the list, right?
Oh, yeah, it's practically a prerequisite for so many marine biology roles. They specifically mention the PADI certification, which is the gold standard for recreational diving. But
Right.
depending on your specialization, you might need additional certifications too, like boating licenses, underwater photography, maybe even training in how to operate those remote-controlled vehicles they use for deep-sea exploration.
Okay, so the skills list is already pretty intense, but I think what really brings this all to life is how RoleCatcher breaks down the actual career stages. They give you a peek into how these skills actually play out as you move up the ladder, right?
Yeah, they do a great job of outlining that typical progression from entry-level roles all the way up to, leading your own research teams. And each stage comes with its own set of responsibilities, challenges, and of course, you know what everyone's thinking, potential salary bumps.
Okay, now we're talking. So tell me more about these stages. What can someone realistically expect, starting out?
So at the entry level, you're generally looking at research assistant positions. These are often temporary or part-time roles where you're primarily assisting those more senior scientists with their research.
Yeah.
Think data collection, lab analysis, maybe even if you're lucky, tagging along on some field expeditions, which, let's be honest, is what everyone's dreaming about when they first get into this field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that foot in the door. So what about moving up to that next level?
That's where things start to get even more interesting. As a junior marine biologist, you're typically expected to start managing your own small-scale research projects. So you're responsible for designing the studies, collecting and analyzing the data, and even potentially starting to publish your findings in scientific journals.
So more responsibility, but also more independence. You're
Exactly.
really starting to make your mark at that point. What's the salary range looking like at that stage?
Let's see. According to RoleCatcher, the median salary for a junior marine biologist is somewhere around $65,000 per year. But it's important to remember that this can vary based on a whole bunch of factors like location, your experience level, the type of organization you're working for.
Yeah, of course.
Like, for example, someone working at a prestigious research institute in, say, San Francisco or something, they're likely going to earn significantly more than someone working for a small nonprofit out in a rural area.
Makes sense. Experience, location, it always plays a role. But it's still helpful to at least have those ballpark figures in mind. So let's say you've put in a few years as a junior marine biologist. Where do you go from there?
Well, with enough dedication and, a proven track record, you can set your sights on a senior marine biologist position.
Yeah.
At that level, you're not just managing projects anymore, you're leading them.
Okay, so you're calling the shots.
Pretty much.
That's got to be both exciting and, I don't know, maybe a little intimidating.
It definitely is. At that stage, you're responsible for things like securing funding for your projects, managing budgets, overseeing the work of other researchers. Sometimes you're even supervising grad students or mentoring early career scientists.
Wow, so it's a lot of people management too.
It can be.
And the salary hopefully reflects that increased responsibility.
It does. RoleCatcher says the median salary for a senior marine biologist is around $95,000, with the potential to earn well into six figures, depending again on experience and your area of specialization.
Okay, now that's pretty encouraging for someone who's serious about making this a long-term career. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, dreaming of six-figure salaries and leading these amazing research expeditions, let's talk about actually landing that first job in the first place.
Oh, good point. Because even with all the right qualifications, that interview process can be a make-or-break moment.
For sure.
And this is something else RoleCatcher addresses really well.
Oh, good. Because with that 200 to 1 applicant ratio we talked about earlier, you just know the competition's going to be tough. What kind of insider tips does RoleCatcher offer?
Well, they have this whole section dedicated specifically to interview prep.
Yep.
And it gets surprisingly detailed, actually walk you through some of the most common interview questions you might get asked. Things like, tell me about a time you overcame a challenge during a research project, or how do you stay up to date on the latest developments in marine biology?
So pretty classic interview questions, but tailored specifically to this field, which is really helpful. But what I thought was really cool was their dedicated interview tool. Over 120,000 practice questions. That's wild.
It's like having this whole ocean of potential interview scenarios right at your fingertips.
Mm.
And it's not just about the questions themselves. They also offer AI-powered feedback on your answers. It's almost like having a personal interview coach in your pocket.
Okay, that is seriously cool. So, with all this in mind, the demanding education, the diverse skills needed, that fierce competition is a career as a marine biologist actually all it's cracked up to be. What's the verdict?
Well, I think RoleCatcher does a good job of painting a really realistic picture. It's undeniably challenging. You need a strong educational foundation, a diverse skill set, and honestly, you just have to be willing to hustle for those limited job opportunities.
Right, it's not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not.
But then on the flip side, you get to contribute to a field that's so vital, exploring the wonders of the ocean, maybe even influencing conservation efforts.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher does a really good job of highlighting that immense reward that comes with this kind of career.
Yeah.
It's about following your passion, your love for marine life, and then using your expertise to hopefully make a real difference, protecting our oceans for future generations.
And that's a pretty powerful motivator.
For sure.
Now, we've been talking a lot about the more traditional path, becoming a research scientist, but RoleCatcher also brings up something really interesting, alternative career paths within marine science.
Yeah, that's right. Because you can have this passion for the ocean, but maybe that leads you down a less conventional path. Like maybe you're fascinated by marine life, but you also happen to be a fantastic writer. You could become a science journalist, sharing those fascinating ocean discoveries with a wider audience.
Oh, for sure. Or maybe you're a tech whiz who could develop underwater robotics for exploration.
Exactly. There's so many possibilities. You could work in policy, education, conservation, even entrepreneurship. The key is to really figure out what your unique strengths are, what you're passionate about, and then find where those things intersect with the world of marine science.
This is blowing my mind. It's like we've opened up this whole new coral reef of possibilities.
Right.
But before we get too carried away exploring those alternative paths, let's take another quick break to hear from our sponsors. When we return, we'll wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts on how to actually chart your course in the incredible world of marine biology. Don't go anywhere. And we're back, wrapping things up on our deep dive into the world of marine biology. It's funny, hearing about all these different paths you can take, research scientist, science journalist, it really hits home that there's no one right way to have a career in this field, is there?
Not at all. And that's something RoleCatcher's really good at emphasizing. They even have this cool tool, they call it the Career Compass, that's designed to help you explore those related career paths. So, maybe you're super passionate about marine conservation. This tool can actually connect you with organizations that are doing really important work in that area.
So even if, the traditional research route isn't your thing, there are still ways to find a career that aligns with your love for the ocean.
Totally. Because at the end of the day, it's all about finding that sweet spot, right?
Mm.
Where your skills and interests line up with what the field actually needs.
And I like how RoleCatcher doesn't just, throw all this info at you and then say, good luck. They actually give you tools and resources to actually, take action.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Whether it's connecting with people in the field through their platform or taking advantage of those interview prep resources or just diving into those 120,000 practice questions, they really do empower you to kind of chart your own course.
It's like having a personal career navigator, but for marine biology. So for anyone listening who's feeling that pull, that call of the ocean, wanting to make a difference, what would you say is the most important thing to take away from our deep dive today?
That's a good question. I think it's this. Don't limit yourself. Whether you're picturing yourself leading research expeditions, or maybe you're more drawn to inspiring the next generation of ocean advocates, there's a place for you in this field. Embrace the challenges, never lose that curiosity, and just never ever stop exploring the possibilities.
Beautifully said. And hey, who knows? Maybe one day we'll have you back on the show, sharing your own marine biology journey on a future deep dive. So to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep that passion for the ocean alive. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.